Recording in progress.
Good morning, honorable members and colleagues. I would like to believe most of us are on the platform. It's 9:04. Shanaz, can I check from you if we have any apologies today?
Chair and everybody on the platform. So the apologies that we received for this morning's meeting, Chair, is from the Minister as well as from the DG of DSI. They both have engagements that clash with this meeting. From the members' side, we've got an apology from Masibia, who's attending another portfolio committee meeting that's also at the same time. Those are the apologies noted for today, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shanaz. I must say that we haven't seen the DG of Science and Innovation in some time, and I would like for colleagues to indicate to the DG that it would be good to see him in the 2024 in 2024. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think unless I'm mistaken, but I don't think we've seen DG in this year yet. So colleagues, today we will be interacting with the Department of Science and Innovation on its activities aimed at stimulating increasing business investment in research, development, and innovation, specifically the Sector Innovation Funds and the Industry Innovation Partnership. We'll also look into a briefing on the report on the performance of the Research and Development Tax Incentive Program for 2019-2020 and 2020-2021. I know we had already started some conversations last week when we were looking at the quarterly report. Was it last week? I think it was last week when we were looking at the quarterly reports and starting some conversations on the impact of budget cuts on, for example, some of these, interventions of the department, such as the Sector Innovation Funds, and so forth. So, I believe that Dr. Morfe will be leading the delegation from the DSI, and so we look forward to the presentation, and we do anticipate to have concluded our work by 11:30 today. I do understand that many members do have party commitments today, and so we are cognizant of that, and we will try our best to be as swift as possible in the work that we're doing, but also being effective in our oversight work. Let me then hand over to Dr. Morfe. Is it me or is Dr. Morphe not audible?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay. I'm just also trying to share the presentation, but I don't think I have access to that.
Sorry, Doc, it is open for sharing, eh?
It is open. Okay, I'm really struggling on my side, actually.
Okay, can we find an alternative perhaps? Oh, there we
Yes.
go. Well, it's sharing the screen.
Yeah. I think there's probably just been a couple of challenges because I was initially even battling to just log into the meeting.
Could another colleague perhaps flight the presentation and then Dr. Morphe will follow?
Homoto, can you please share?
Let me try, DDG.
Yeah, please, thanks. And just as she's loading the presentation, I just want to highlight that from the department side, I've been joined
Sorry,
by...
DDG. It says I can't share if someone is sharing. Are you still sharing?
Okay,
Check for me.
Okay, I'm not sharing. Okay, it's coming through.
Is it okay? Is it in the presentation?
Just put it on the presentation mode.
Is it fine?
That's correct. Thanks. That's good. Thanks very much. Thanks a lot, Chairperson. I think I just wanted to just introduce the team from the department. We have Homuto Machila, who is the Chief Director. She is responsible for the portfolio that deals with R&D tax incentives and also the various business surveys that we present. And I'm also joined by Dr. Koni Rashamuse, who is the Chief Director for what we call Innovation Priorities Instrument, and he is currently leading the implementation of the Innovation Fund. I think in terms of the presentation, if we can go to the next slide, this presentation is going to be given in a particular context. And this context is based on the latest R&D survey. And I think it is important to do that because even as we go into some of the interventions that we are implementing, one is able to then relate it back to the current developments in terms of the trends on business sector and R&D in South Africa. So we will present that, and then we also will go into what we have been doing as a department to try and deal with some of the challenges. And then from there to highlight some of the public-private partnerships in research as an enabler, and that will include an update on initiatives such as the Innovation Fund and what we see them doing in helping us encourage investment by the business in R&D in South Africa. Next slide. So this is basically what we intend to be doing today, and I'll just go to the next slide, Homuso. So the trends on business sector R&D in South Africa, looking at the gross R&D investment, the business sector contribution, and the international comparisons, of course, so that we really have a sense of when we say we need to increase the investment by businesses in R&D in South Africa, in what context globally are we looking into that? And then also the factors that are impacting on the investment or lack thereof, and how we're dealing with those. Next slide. So the gross expenditure on R&D in South Africa was estimated to be 38.2 billion rands in 2021-22, and this is really the latest statistics, which will be published in the next coming days. And in nominal terms, we find that the expenditure has expanded over the past two decades. But we are obviously concerned that even though this current survey shows us an uptick from the previous survey, which was basically just around the COVID time, there are some of the concerns. But we are cautiously optimistic and celebrating the fact that there has been an increase of about 4.6 billion rand from 2020-2021. So in 2020-21, in constant 2015 rand terms, so the GED has increased for the first time in 3 years. However, when we look over the past 10 years, we are seeing that there is actually a contraction in the investment that we're making in science, technology, and innovation research. And this is really concerning, especially because we know the impact of R&D and also the fact that we've got a much higher target of what as a country we need to be investing in R&D. Next slide. So this is really just showing the trend. As you can see, there was a nice growth from 2008 up until 2017. And then we started seeing a drop. And you can see in 2020, which was really at the heart of COVID, there was that dip. And now we're starting to see a little bit of an uptick. But obviously, for us to start celebrating is we need to look at what this means. You know, if we are targeting 1.5, then we're still quite far off. So this is really what we're looking at. And as you see, we also are comparing this with the business investment. And you can see it has also followed the same trajectory. But most worryingly, you can see that it actually has had a much bigger dip compared to what government is currently investing. Next slide. Next slide, Khomotso. So this is really just to indicate the R&D intensity over the years. And again, this starts from 2003, 2004. We can all see that we reached the peak around 2008, 2009, when we were just over 0.8%. And I think at the time, we know that what happened in 2008 was the global financial crisis, which had a huge impact on the economy and our GDP. And it really started what has now become a kind of an undesired contraction in the investment in R&D. Next slide. So, and as you can see on the previous slide, just to reflect on the target of 1.1 investment in R&D as a percentage of the GDP in 2024 is definitely hopelessly missed in this regard. Now, in terms of how the shifting has been for R&D funding by source, and here when we say by source, we're looking at the foreign sources, we're looking at other sources, and we're looking at business and government. And what you see, especially if you compare the government versus the private, the business, you see that it basically is the inversion of the graph. So starting back in 2003, we can see that the business was investing more in R&D, and then 2010, 2011 up till now, we now are seeing government starting to lead and the business sector lagging behind. Now, this is a worry, and you'll see why it worries us, because when we look at the global comparison, R&D intensive countries, this graph shouldn't be what it is now. Next slide. So, as we have shown in the previous slide, government continues to fund most of R&D with business, showing a little bit of pick up from 2020 to 2021. But that picking up hasn't really amounted to something worth celebrating for various reasons. One, because it is still way too low compared to what we're targeting. And two, because when business is not investing in R&D, we have to be concerned about the competitiveness of our economy as well. And that really is why this unbundling of statistics of investment in R&D is quite crucial. Next slide. So we also have started to see, as we look into this particular survey, that we're starting to see increase in foreign sources of funding, and this has increased by just 1 billion rand, from 4.2 to 5.5 billion. And this has really been a little bit consistent with the previous years. The higher education, we see that they are the major beneficiary from foreign funding. And this is because, as we have seen, that we have built quite strong infrastructure and research and development culture in our higher education institution, to a point that they are part of various global research programs, whether you talk about the European Union Framework Program or the health initiatives that involve the US and the UK and other developed countries programs. So the business sector received an increase of 104% of the foreign funding. This increased from 978 million the previous year of survey to the current year of survey, which was about 2 billion rands. So next slide. So this is really just showing the nominal values in terms of the increase, what actually this increase means in numbers. And then we're looking, of course, the not-for-profit and higher education sectors, where the only sector that's registered decreases in real value, but in other areas there were increases. Next slide. So the characteristic of the business expenditure on research in South Africa. So this really measures the amount of R&D spent by business sector in the economy. It's widely used as a measure of business investment, technology, and innovation, which is why we said when the investment goes down, we worry about innovation in the business sector and hence the competitiveness of our businesses. So it adds to competitive strength by improving the capability for producing new technology and also to absorb external knowledge, because when you are not ready to innovate, it also makes it difficult to assimilate foreign technologies, and it normally will take a lot of time. So we want to really see companies involved in investment in R&D. So highly competitive economies tend to attract larger shares of global business R&D. And business also tend to be more susceptible to competition for investment, hence the increased use of R&D incentives in their university. So we want to use these various incentives because we see that there is more opportunities in business participating in R&D than just saying they are investing. We also see, for example, when businesses start to decrease their investment in R&D, we also lose a lot of high-end jobs. So we've seen a couple of years back how we lost, for example, PhD and master's jobs in the likes of Sasol when they were starting to do a lot of their R&D outside the country. So the business sector remained the largest R&D investor up until 2018 at 39%, at which time the higher education started to take over. And now you will also see that the way in which this statistics is disaggregated, what we generally or normally refer to as government would actually also have been broken down. So you'll see there's government, there's a higher education sector, and there's also state entities which are aggregated differently, even though they are all part of government. The next slide. So we see that the bulk, more than 90% of BED, comprises applied research and experimental development, as opposed to higher education institutions which spend more on basic research. And this is really to be expected. So typically of what we'll do through our higher education institutions is to create that capacity and foundation. And then the private sector will then be interested when you start building on towards innovation and product development. And that's really why they start participating more on the high end. So you see the orange and the gray, which is where we see the businesses are much more playing their role there than elsewhere. Next slide. So a study using National Treasury and SARS panel data revealed that the level of concentration of R&D active firms with a small number of larger firms and older firms, the focus really is in manufacturing, mining, utilities, and business services. And this is pretty much in line with what has been the dominant contributors to our GDP, especially in the area of mining. And you find that what you find in mining, you'll also find aspects of manufacturing. So a lot of work and research by investment tends to be in those particular areas. R&D active firms allocate a relatively small share of their resources to R&D. So in other words, while they still invest, but the R&D intensity itself is very low compared to firms in the OECD countries. So we really are lagging behind. The estimated return to R&D South African manufacturing firm is high compared to OECD countries. So which means that if we really invest more, we also are able to compound the impact in terms of the returns that we gain from R&D. So we really stand with a much better advantage in this regard. Next slide. So this is really just to show the international comparison when we look at R&D tax subsidy. So we see by a show of arrow where South Africa is, and almost on the tail end, but I think it needs to be stated that when it comes to the developing countries, we probably stand out as one of those countries that are really in the mix of trying to encourage R&D investment by the businesses using these R&D tax incentives. Next slide. So, of course, there is an indication of what the direct funding and government tax incentive is as a percentage of GDP. And when you look at that, you can see that it is quite low. But of course, we need to really look at this incentive in terms of how it's always about the balancing act. And I think that so far, while more can still be done, we really need to appreciate the commitment of a government in providing these particular incentives. Next slide. So this is really just to compare internationally. The bubbles obviously showing the amounts. We do sit somewhere with our small bubbles, and it is important to again realize that it isn't really all the countries that provide this incentive. So we sit there with a handful of countries that do that, and we are quite aware that even though people might have been saying this incentive is not working or so on, but we were able to see during the time when its expiry date was coming that there was a lot of concerns from the business sector about the coming to an end of this incentive. So we therefore are quite excited about this extension that we received. So it is indeed an instrument that is recognized and valued, and maybe in the past it was just one of those that because it was there, people didn't really seem to pay attention to the impact that it was having. Next slide. So what are the factors that are impacting on business investment in R&D in South Africa? We have also see that there were just slow demand conditions. So, for example, we have indicated that you find that it is really a handful of firms that are involved, but that are using these incentives. There's also been issues of uncertainties, especially as we were coming more towards the end of the first dispensation of this incentive. There's also a challenge around inadequate human resources. So the competition for high quality researchers between the private sector, universities, and our state-owned entities like the CSIR, MRC, and so forth is quite huge. And you therefore find that the businesses might not have adequate human resources. And we acknowledge that that is not just an issue in business. It is generally that much as we have got pockets of excellence in terms of capacity for research, we do not have nearly as much as we should have in terms of the kind of the critical mass that we're looking for. The slowing private rates of investment, one of the things we see, and we've seen that even in government, is that when conditions economically become difficult, research becomes casualty of budget cuts and so on. And the private sector is the same thing. So when they think about saving a cent here and there, it's easy to just say, let's close our R&D activities. Tight fiscal conditions, especially in the public sector, we now sit here and we're talking about I wouldn't like to call them budget cuts. Probably these are budget amputations that we have to deal with. The general state of technological development in the country as well. And we also are aware that the COVID-19 pandemic has actually contributed so much because businesses really came to a halt, and hence there was a huge impact on business investment in R&D. We do have a number of measures that we are putting in place to try and improve the climate of investment. We're looking at government support for innovation. I will relate to some of that in the slides that are to come. The R&D tax incentives, of course, the fact that it continues for another 10 years is a big plus. We are strengthening our partnerships with the private sector on innovation programs. And of course, the IP policy for publicly funded R&D is also very crucial because it also encourages investment in R&D when people know that when we invest and we generate IP, it's going to be protected. That is encouraging. The new drivers of growth, for example, opportunities that are coming through from digitalization, the role of bioeconomy. In digitalization, we talk about new areas such as artificial intelligence, blockchain, and so forth. These are beginning to also drive a lot of companies into investing in or thinking about investing in research, because it's a case of you invest or you get left behind. Of course, we're using human capital development as one of the areas to try and deal with this. And we've got a huge program in the area of scientific infrastructure. And this is quite important because what you are starting to see is that some of the investments that we have done over the years have been very crucial in attracting global investment. For example, we now are hosting the mRNA Technology Transfer Hub. It's on the basis of the investment we have made over the years in health research. And that also now is having the normal virtuous cycle where we're getting more and more investments. Next slide. So we did a survey to look at what are some of the challenges, and some have raised the issues of capacity, and this was really 54 respondents. And one of the things that I need to declare upfront in this slide is that in some of them you'll find that the total doesn't necessarily add up on the slide, but they do add up in total. It says that in some instances we didn't want to have 38, 9, and then 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So because in other instances, the respondents who were giving different reasons were just too few to include. But by and large, on the capacity issue, the main issues that came across was issues of skills and expertise, and then the issues of equipment and facilities not being available. So those were the main issues around there. In terms of affordability of research activities, lack of own funds, we see 17 respondents, R&D funding not available, again 16, and then R&D is expensive, again 17. And here, the issue of expense in R&D was normally related to the following point, which is around timing. To say R&D has a long return on investment time frames, and it's time consuming, so it therefore tends to be expensive. Whereas if you get into the culture of innovation and in R&D, the cumulative impact becomes much more measurable and beneficial. And then the impact of poor economic environment, that also we had 20 respondents there. The next slide. The issue of the need for improved support, and here there were references to incentives, to subsidy, capacity buildings and skills and expertise, and also provide publicity and marketing of companies and products. So those are some of the things that came out to say, if we deal with these things, we might be able to improve the situation. Improve economic environment, 23 respondents looking at the issues of visas and the issues of supporting localizations, and we will also show how we are addressing those. Improving knowledge and awareness, and this is really one thing that we have started to do, especially around the R&D tax incentive programs. Last year, we started a huge drive to raise awareness for this instrument, because we're seeing that it is important we do that, especially to the small players, SMEs, and those large enterprises that were not participating. The improved collaboration between the private sector, research entities, and university, this, I think, remains one of the ongoing challenges. Providing better funding, we need to keep on increasing our investment. And as I say, there's an aggregating factor. When you put more from the government side, you increase the other sources, and ultimately you then raise the confidence that you start seeing business bringing more and more of their own resources. The increase of capacity, looking at providing facilities and equipment and skilled persons, and the issues of facilities, we cannot underestimate the role, for example, of our national research facilities that we have. Next slide. So just briefly on the support for R&D through the tax incentives. Let's go to the next slide. These are the topics that we're going to cover. So we are aware that companies undertaking R&D in South Africa qualify for 150% tax deduction on the R&D expenditure in terms of Section 11D of the Income Tax Act as amended. Then there's an issue at corporate tax of 27%. The incentives translate into a benefit of 13.5 cents per rand. spent on R&D, reducing the user cost to R&D. And this is quite important, that you basically spend, but then there are benefits of your role and participation in R&D. And for a company to benefit from the incentive, it must be an incorporated entity, it must be recognized under the Income Tax Act, and it must be eligible. It must be conducting eligible R&D activities, because sometimes we've got people who come in wanting to claim for activities that are basically not R&D. So not-for-profit organizations do not qualify. Next slide. So to address underinvestment by companies compared to socially optimal level, by increasing the tax, the after-tax return, so that it becomes more affordable to increase R&D investment. And so we know that companies will tell you that R&D is generally expensive and risky, and they are correct. But as like anything else, there is an upside of that. Is that when you look at risk, it can actually also be highly rewarding. So the logic, of course, is that when we reduce the tax liability, we will really be able to attract more investment in R&D and build capacity for new product and processes. And when they develop new product and processes, they become efficient, they become competitive, then they can also be able to pay more tax. Next slide. So this is really just to show where it fits in the innovation value chain, from discovery, research, development and pre-commercialization and commercialization. So we also have a number of incentive schemes from government that we have mapped there, whether it's R&D tax incentives. We see the Technology and Human Resources for Industry program, the TIA-SEED funding, the DTIC support program for industry, industrial innovation, the TIA Technology Development Fund, Small Business Development Department Technology Transfer Support. So what we just basically saying is that we do feel that there are a number of government instruments that are in place to do these things. Yes, of course, part of what we're doing through the decadal plan is to improve efficiencies and coordination in this, but they are there, and we can really coordinate better to make sure that they are able to really fit into a whole range of other incentives, including the R&D tax incentives, which ranges from basic research up to technology development of prototypes. So then we are saying after that, there could be other instruments that can take over in supporting the business to continue the investment. Next slide. So this is really just a timeline from where the light was lit on the R&D tax incentive up till the time when the policy decision was entered into 2021 in terms of what happens now after we have entered the sunset clause in October 2022. Next slide. So one of the most exciting news for the system was during the budget speech last year, where the minister announced the incentive extension for 10 years till 2033. And what we're also doing is looking into simplifying the definition, looking into how best we can look at other areas that we can keep improving to make sure that the lessons that we have picked up from the first dispensation can actually be brought on to improve the current dispensation. Next slide. So the additionality effect of R&D tax incentive will take time to emerge, but there are some that we have already picked up. In terms of input additionality, that it actually generates more R&D input. On the output side, improved in economic performance of firms that are undertaking R&D. And of course, it also helps in terms of just how it shapes the evolution of R&D strategies generally. Next slide. So what we have learned, and and the international evidence shows that there is a positive effect of R&D tax incentives. It boosts business R&D. 1 unit of R&D support translates into 1.4 additional units of R&D. There's 10% reduction in the user cost of R&D, increase spending by 20%. And then our own evidence shows the beneficiaries spend more on in-house R&D investment, both in terms of expenditure and intensity, thereby reducing technology in licensing. A beneficiary spend an additional 4 million rands on R&D, and every rand forgone in tax revenue yielded an additional spend on R&D of 1.83. So it does show that even in our own shows, the R&D tax incentive does have positive impact. Next slide. So what have we really learned? The World Bank's impact evaluation revealed that revealed similar descriptive analysis to what we have picked up in our own analysis. There is evidence of increased spending of beneficiaries. And here we must also caution that the data set was very limited, but it does point to the fact that indeed, as we have observed in our own evidence, it probably does have that impact of increased spending by beneficiaries. Increase in the remuneration of the beneficiary employees, which is a positive thing. And of course, normally when you talk about progress in report compliance, those are some of the issues that we need to deal with. In terms of the recommendation, we need to really streamline the application process, which we have started to do, and I'm pleased to say that we have launched an online system to make sure that whether you are anywhere in the world, you can still be able to apply for this particular initiative. The use of digital tools for application process and progress report, that's something that we've already started doing. Introduce scoring tools into the application process. This will just also increase the transparency and reduce the time it has been taking us in terms of the turnaround times, and also improve coordination of support programs for innovation. This is really one thing that I've indicated that we, in the context of the decadal plan, we are now working with other government departments to see how do we placate all these incentives in a manner that they will be easily accessible and in the eyes of the business to take use of. The use of SARS text data is also going to be quite useful. The next slide. So hindrances to participation. Yes, we've been told that the system itself was very complex. The application process, the cost in terms of the time spent, and sometimes having to involve consultants to really help you do it. So we find that if something that is there as an incentive becomes difficult to administer, then we need to find a way of making it simple, because it doesn't make sense if a small enterprise is going to need to hire consultancies to use the incentives, then perhaps it might just defeat the purpose. So we're looking at how to simplify it. There's also a lot of lack of knowledge out there about the incentives, so we're trying to raise awareness to deal with the issues of excessive turnaround times, which have been improving, and the issues around progress reports. Of course, we need to have those submitted in time and with quality, and the issue of SARS compliance and audits, and also a lack of cash credit as some would want it to be. But these are issues that we will probably find ways of addressing them. Not that all of them will be able to provide solution to, but I think for some we can reach some kind of a sweet spot on. Next slide. So we do understand that more still needs to be done, especially to educate the system about the incentive, supporting to applicants in accessing the incentive. And here we're looking at webinars and various guidelines, and especially now focusing on SMEs so that we can really, because they are more agile when it comes to matters of R&D, and really we need to spend a lot of time trying to bring them online. Next slide. So these are a number of applications or projects over time. We can see that there have been a lot that was coming on in the beginning. So you see that there's a difference between the number of projects and the number of applications, because one application could have a whole lot of projects. So the actual applications received have remained relatively low and flat, but the number of projects has been higher. And we can attribute the sort of leveling off from 2017 till now more as people start to understand sometimes what are the activities that qualify. We tend to find more applications now coming in, more nuanced than the way in the past, where a lot of things used to be submitted that wouldn't necessarily qualify for support as R&D activities. Next slide. So this is companies' participation, and we disaggregate between all companies and new companies. And the issue of new is quite important for us because it shows that you keep on adding new entities with time, and this really is important for the growth of the system and also for the coverage of even other sectors. Next slide. So this is really just to look at the companies supported comparison for 2012 till 2021, and we break down the companies. We also break down the applicant, and so the applicants and then those that were ultimately supported, because in some instances not everybody who applied that gets supported. Next slide. So this is really just if you go into the slide, just proceed, Khomotso. Yeah. So this is really just a background looking into how the support for different size of company goes. So we see we got all sizes, we got large, we got small, we got those that are over 10 million and those that are below, and so on and so forth. So this really is an instrument that known. And then there are other companies that don't indicate their size. So that's where we also have unknown, because for some reason they may not necessarily want to disclose. Next slide. So this is just really the estimate of the support provided through this incentive, 80 billion rand. And then we see in terms of the kind of claims that have come through. So from 2006 to February 2021, there has been supported, the support has been up to about 80 billion rand. Then the approved incentives itself was 25.4 billion under the retrospective system, and this will probably be explained. So there is a retrospective and also a pre-approval system. So it's most of its support in industrial policy priority areas. So we have been able to see that those policy areas that are identified as areas of priority in government have mainly been the ones that benefited. So in reality, 6.6 billion tax revenue has been foregone for the period 2005-2006 to 2020-2021. So what this means, obviously, is that this system means that for you to encourage the investment, you also have to forego some taxes, and that's what the incentive is. So this translates in 44 billion falling under R&D tax incentive during this period. Next slide. So while we have highlighted some of those challenges, there are interventions that we are getting into to encourage business participation in addition to the R&D tax incentives. The other area is really encouraging public-private sector, public-private partnership. And we're looking at initiatives such as the Industry Innovation Partnership Program, which include the Sector Innovation Fund. And we will really reflect what this has enabled us to do over the past couple of years. Next slide. So This is really a slide that I think I'm basically preaching to the converted in terms of just appreciating the value of investment in innovation. So I'm not going to reiterate this slide, so we can go to the next one. So the Economic Competitiveness Support Program was a targeted initiative that was introduced in 2012-13 after the financial crisis to enhance economic competitiveness. So we have seen what the financial crisis did to the investment in R&D. So we received a small portion of allocation from Treasury, and that looks at industry innovation partnerships and technology localization support. The industry innovation partnerships programs was about leveraging industry investment in R&D by stimulating increased core funding for participating industry players. We also use this to mitigate against underinvestment in technology and innovation in identified niche and strategic sectors of the economy. And then really looking at the key long outcomes measure, which is increased contribution to GDP by those companies when they are innovative and successful. Next slide. So these are some of the initiatives. We are aware of the titanium industry development. We are aware of the satellite development program, the Nanotechnology Innovation Center, the ICT partnerships, the Sector Innovation Fund, which looked at supporting fresh produce, forestry, sugar industry, the wine tech, and so the rooibos tea. So there was really a lot of targeted sector support. And then we also are aware probably of the Bio Manufacturing Industry Development Center at the CSIR, which has been central in supporting a lot of spin-out in the bio sector, including in the health and in the beauty sector. The Biorefinery Industry Development Center, which is really looking primarily at the use of waste from the industry such as the sugar sector and forestry into developing a high-value product. The photonics facility, and of course, the nano micro device manufacturing facility. Next slide. So the DSICS and Industry Innovation Development Centers, these have been quite central. And I just want to indicate some of the outcomes that have come out, for example, from the BIDC, which has helped translate biomanufacturing concepts into market-ready products and services. And by and large, when we go to various events where there are exhibitions, the products that you see that are bio-based would normally have come through the BIDC. On the Nanotechnology Support Center, we had looked at the scale-up manufacturing of nano-based products for industry, and there's been a lot of support for small enterprises, which basically looked at supporting manufacturing, scaling up, and also the characterization of nanomaterial. The issue of biorefinery, I've mentioned the impact of the use of industry waste into value-added products, looking at even support in terms of testing and troubleshooting. Next slide. So here we look at the performance. There are a number of pilots that have gone through. We see even the beneficiaries being the students, and the breakdown in terms of the students in terms of demographics and the level of education. And it is quite important that some of the students end up going out and spinning out their own companies on the basis of the products that they've been supported on. So 35% of the students have been employed in industry, whether as material scientists, chemical engineers, process engineers, and so forth. And as I've indicated, some have actually tended to remain in research, and others to start their own enterprises. Next slide. So, and then we also pride ourselves in some of the companies that are spinning out from the support from the centers. We've got a company like Siyabona Mycelium, which we'll also talk a bit more about. Cape Bio, this again another company that was spun out of a technology development. CSIR, they have actually been accredited to manufacture COVID diagnostics during COVID period, and that was on the back of the support from the department. The Sesong teas, again, craft teas that are manufactured by community old women in the community in Sekhukhune. They have also received funding to build up a bigger manufacturing facility from the IDC. They're creating employment in the villages. So we have seen that these programs also involve a lot of interns, and interns also, most of them get permanently employed in these entities. Next slide. Here we're just indicating the number of SMEs that have been supported through these initiatives. The next slide. So this is just to expand on some of the exciting success stories or impact on a company like Cape Bio and also on Sawubona Miselium. These companies, and one is probably excited that a company like Cape Bio, starting from having only 2 youngsters who were the directors of the company, to now having a permanent team of about 12. Actually, in the peak of COVID, they had up to 40 employees. So you can see that this is really having an impact, I would say, in terms of what the incentives we are providing. Sawubona Miselium is also another company. They are a startup, but 2 permanent employees, but they always have contract employees and interns that they take on every year. Next slide. This is other 2 companies, the Eco Invader companies and also Solar Biotech. I wouldn't again go into the details, but you can really start to see that indeed these incentives and instruments were enabling us to spin out more. And when they employ people and when they sell their products, it really again goes back into them being a legal taxpayers in our system. Next slide. So there are, of course, lessons learned and challenges, and we continue to look at opportunities, whether it is about partnerships. The other issue that we're really working on is access. Of course, these facilities are hugely in the cities, but we would want to use, for example, in our strategy for the expansion of the tech stations, we will want to really begin to have a much more global reach than we currently have in terms of these incentives. So we're looking at how some of these can actually be part of the extension of the work that the tech stations do. Next slide. The Sector Innovation Fund, this again is a fund that we have used to look at which are the sectors in our economy need some kind of support for them to be much more competitive. Next slide. So, and as I've indicated, you see that we have looked at sectors that have a high impact, and the majority of them currently, and they are more in the area of agriculture and agro-processing. So that's why you see we also are partnering when we look at other government, sister government departments, DALRAT. We supporting the likes of WineTech. We look at the partnership with the like of forestry and fisheries on the rooibos tea side. You probably might be aware of the current beneficiary model that the rooibos tea now have, which is quite exciting. But what is important is begin to say what are the newer and more innovative products that these companies can then get involved with, so that when you look at forestry and you got the challenge around the paper becoming historical, what are opportunities in terms of newer products that this forestry can look at? What is the newer opportunities, for example, for rooibos tea beyond just the tea, sugar industry, beyond the sugar? What are the other products that they can do? So you see that there's been a lot of investment, so we invest and the sector itself also invests. So that again is a model that encourages co-investment. And we'll also see how that has benefited the sector. Next slide. So of course, in terms of the indicators, we look at human capital development, IP, the transformation. We're very intentional on ensuring that these sectors that we support are transformed, and also the issues of improving competitiveness, and then the creation of jobs. So that's how we measure our success. Next slide. So this is really just simply, summarizes what the impact has been in terms of employment, in terms of students that have been co-funded, and so on and so forth. And you see that the numbers do show what we call additionality, what would have happened, what would have not have happened if we haven't really gotten into these joint partnerships. And then, of course, we always see that when we review these instruments, that the private sector really comes on board to say, please, let's continue with this because it is really helping us in all ways, in terms of competitiveness, and in terms of transformation, and in terms of development of capabilities. Next slide. So in terms of human capital development, and we have divided this according to the various sector, we see in terms of the gender and the race ratio, 53% female and 57% Black individuals who have benefited. Improvement, this was really during the first leg of SIF. So second leg, we started to see improvement, the 60% in terms of gender representation, and 60% in terms of the beneficiaries, 64 in terms of beneficiary being Black individuals. So students that are supported here end up, some of them being absorbed within the sectors. Next slide. In terms of researcher base, of course, we also want to continue to increase the researcher base. And you will see here that the demographics in terms of the researcher is not that great, and in terms both when you look at gender and when you look at race. And then, of course, because we are using the pipeline of the kind of students that are coming through, we obviously need to build it that way. So the pipeline will obviously mean that in future, this picture will begin to change. So we see that at 60% female and 64% Black beneficiaries in terms of students, that basically will move us in terms of those who graduate to be researcher into a much more healthier demographic representation. Next slide. So what are the achievements of SIF in terms of competitiveness? We have seen that the industry co-funding was about 107 coming from the private sector, so which is quite good. It wouldn't have been really triggered unless we have invested. We still invest a little bit more, but we're hoping that with time, the sector itself will start to contribute more. So we always say there must be cash contribution. So we don't support any sector unless the sector itself is prepared to put in the money. So this is really another area of making sure that we encourage investment by the business sector. We have seen improved competitiveness where various products have actually come to the market, the cost saving, operational efficiencies, and then in instances in agriculture, the reduction of pests and disease control, diversification of products, and also plantation management in case of forestries. And the SOE participation, we're also seeing that the likes of Safcola are also coming on board, for example, on the forestry stuff. Next slide. Citrus industry, we know the impact of the citrus sector in our economy. Again, the participation here was more into ensuring that we deal with some of what we see as non-tariff barriers that get imposed to our products in the market. And so with R&D, you are able to then deal with those and have products that are not going to be unnecessarily discriminated against. So they have also invested and committing about 150 million per annum for R&D over a period of 4-year cycle. And we're quite excited about this level of commitment. Next slide. This is a case around the chilling injury losses that we have in the grapefruit that have been solved through this program in partnership with the sector. And we can see that by solving this problem, the losses would amount to about 250 million rand per year. And we are pleased that because of this intervention, exports to USA, China, and South Korea have grown 21-fold. And that means we're talking about a growth from 400,000 cartons per year to about 1.9 million. So this is quite exciting. And the income increased from 68 million to 323 million over a 5-year period. And remember, when we increase exports in these sectors, we also preserve or increase employment creation. And this is the research spent in that particular regard. Next slide. Cape Flora shipping. Again, this is quite important. You know, how you ship your flower and at what conditions they arrive at the next destination. You need to look at various things, the dynamics around carbon dioxide and oxygen level in a closed ventilation system. Solving that problem, we have been able to have the annual saving of 71 million per annum and the freight cost saving per container of 153,000. Again, total research spend 315,000. So you can see the impact of an investment of 315,000 rands vis-a-vis the kind of returns that came in as a benefit to the sector. Next slide. The infrastructure capacity building for phenotyping of plantation trees varieties, again, quite important in the forestry sector. You want to use the modern technologies to phenotype. So you don't want to plant the forest and wait for 15 years before you know that, oh, this is the right cultivar, or it can withstand this particular pests and diseases. But when you look at the modern ways of phenotyping, this results in a lot of saving. So you're looking at, for example, 392 million rands losses per year, and 2 billion rand in additional downstream processing loss. And when you intervene through research, you start to then immediately cut these losses down. Next slide. So these are the achievements in terms of the case studies. So we're looking at new products, we're looking at increased savings, increased exports, and also preserved and increased employment creation. And again, we're starting to see that this is also attracting investment from other funders, whether they are government or private sector, especially the likes of the IDC, looking at funding full-scale facilities that are looking into development of newer products. Next slide. There are, of course, challenges. The funding is not always certain, and that can really be very damaging for the relationship that we have with the private sector. For example, we have had a lot of delays in payment to this sector, which was duly because the transfer from Treasury wasn't coming on time. So that does have a lot of impact. So we need to really also look at having a dedicated budget line item for this program, which is very important. And also because we want to grow it beyond.
Recording stopped.
And then to really expand, as I've indicated, to other sectors.
Recording in progress.
Involvement, the issue of transformation. We also looking to increase the involvement of black and small and emerging sectors, black and small enterprises, especially looking also at emerging sectors of the economy, and to increase the generation of newer knowledge and products into the system. Next slide. So the last area that we're going to look at is the Innovation Fund. This is a new program that we started implementing to again increase and encourage business to invest in R&D. And this is mainly looking at the higher end where products have been developed, the IP is in place, but it hasn't been de-risked enough to encourage business to put more funding for it to become commercial. And we then have to partner with seasoned fund managers like the SME Fund, of course, our own Technology Innovation Agency, the Public Investment Corporation, and we brought on board the likes of Anza Capital recently. And why we're doing this is because we're entering into a territory of getting into the market. So these fund managers have got processes and systems and capacity in place to do proper due diligence for a product that needs to get into the market. So they are quite crucial in helping us, therefore identify which are the areas of investment that are going to be helpful and help us de-risk so that they can have an impact in the economy. Next slide. So we looked at, in terms of where we invested the Innovation Fund, of course, we look generally primarily at the publicly funded IP, but we also are mindful that there could be other IP that is being generated in the country that may not have been publicly funded, but which, if it is supported, it can actually have a much bigger impact in the economy. So in terms of the split, 64% of the IP that we supported under the fund was coming from the publicly funded R&D, and then the rest was funded, either coming from the private sector or from private individual. So what have we seen is that the leveraging effect was actually 6 times. So in other words, you put R1 into this fund, you were able to attract 6 times whatever you've put in. And this is really quite encouraging. We have been given this fund as a pilot for 3 years. And I think all the signs are that indeed this is the kind of fund that will have an impact in terms of also bridging what we call the IP leakage in the system. Next slide. So as of December 2022, and we probably will be extracting the latest statistics, a total of 75 SMEs have been supported through this program. And these were at technology level that are greater than 76% of them. At TRL level, less than 7, and then 24% still at 76 more, and 24 still at less than 7 TR level 7. And this is really quite to make sure that there are some of the highly promising innovations that may still be at lower TRLAs. So we feel that if they are supported, we can kick them into higher TRLs, technology readiness level, that they can then go into the market. So we have been able to bend backwards to pick those up, but the majority of them, you can see they are at higher technology readiness level. The business investment across business development life cycle, 42% early and pre-commercial stages, and 58% commercial. Transformation, 70.2% of the supported investees are Black-led or Black-owned, while 49.5% of the Black-owned recipients are women. So it is quite important, and I think this does need to be looked at in terms of the context of the country itself, where we have generally found that there's lower level of participation by these designated groups on high-tech sectors. So the targeting to really look at these kind of stats does show that it is indeed promising that we can use this instrument also to support transformation. Spatial distribution, currently 5 provinces, Gauteng 44%, Western Cape 22%, Limpopo 17%, KZN 13%, and Mpumalanga 4%. So this is really just to help us also see what can we do to bring other provinces on board that are not perhaps innovating or investing enough in innovation in terms of their private business participants. Next slide. So these are some of the companies. We have a company like Artisan Biomass, which is in the area of precision medicine. So we are pleased that with this investment, there was an acquiring of the stake of Artisan Biomech by Mediclinic SA, which is really another thing. This is a trend globally in the biotech space. So if a biotech company is successful, you normally see the bigger companies coming in to invest, and in some instances even to take over. So for example, when we talk about vaccine development, much as we talk about the Pfizer vaccine, it's actually a vaccine that Pfizer has been licensed to manufacture, but it was developed by some small players out there. Impulse, which support clinical trial scaling up. Again, this has developed 2 medical devices that are aimed at children, the disabled, and the elderly. And this really is helping us deal with issues of inclusiveness in innovation, where this technology has been found to be user-friendly for kids, for the disabled, and for the elderly. And it also has the potential to strengthen the country's manufacturing position. So we're quite excited about the products that are coming out of this. Cape Biofarms, again, this is where we use plants generally to generate some of the manufacturing, for example, of biologics, where you're supposed to use bacteria or viruses, then you can use plants as sources of what we call the virus-like particle vaccines and so on and so forth. Next slide. We've spoken about Sitsong Teas. This is another exciting community-based project that is creating employment in a rural village. And we're pleased that after our investment, they have gotten an uptake, also a commitment from Food Lovers Market, which will raise the uptake of their units and their manufacturing from 1,000 units per month to 5,000 units per month, which is going to be supported by the funds that we have helped them secure from the IDC. Yebo Fresh is looking at the issues of logistics in the townships, making sure that the spaza shops in the townships the owners don't waste time going to the market, but they've got a system where they can pick up where the stock is getting low, and they can trigger a system where the support can then be, and the deliveries can then be made from a central point to different spaza shops. So instead of the spaza shop owner closing it for 2 hours to go stocking and hiring a buggy to go and get a stuff, they can just pick into the online system and they get their stock delivered to them. Save the time, don't close, and which means that your business runs throughout. Next slide. So the digital support platform and other DST initiatives to stimulate R&D. Next slide. And we're looking at the use of what we call the Innovation Bridge portal. This is where anybody anywhere in the world can go through the portal and see what is the IP that has been developed through public funded R&D in South Africa. And if you are an entrepreneur, you can then say, I like this IP, I want to commercialize it. Or if you are a funder, you can come through and say, oh, I want to fund a product like this into the market because I see commercial value. So this portal is quite significant, and it has now started to grow because it is now helping us as a partnership instrument with the SADC region. And we also are partnering with the likes of the World Bank in its growth. So these digital platforms, of course, will also build on the current 300,000 SMEs that are registered. And then this is quite initiative because we are partnering now with the Small Business Development Department so that they can also have access to this particular platform. Next slide. So there's a whole range of other partnerships, like in the health space, the SHIP is one that is well known. Agricultural bioinnovation programs, where we're looking at solving issues of climate resilience, and especially on the staple products such as maize, wheat, soybean. Farmer development program, again in partnership with various farmer organizations and the Agricultural Research Council. And then looking at technology for new industry development, the role that we're playing in the green hydrogen and the fuel cells technology platform, nanotechnologies, and some of the gains that we have made in the research that we're doing in the platinum sector. Next slide. The seed funding, this is being dispensed of through the Technology Innovation Agency, is another instrument where we put the money and enable companies or even entities to take their products towards commercialization. The next slide. So I think this is really the end. So I think just as I close it off, we do have a challenge to try and encourage business investment in R&D. We've got instruments that are showing that it can be done, such as the Innovation Fund. We've been able to show it through other instruments as well, as we have seen. And we think that if we continue steadfastly increasing these investments, we will slowly begin to turn the tide around the sluggish investment by the private sector in R&D. But most importantly, as you have seen, that we can begin to increase investments and also competitiveness and raise our exports and save and even create employment. So that's basically how I summarize the presentation. And in terms of questions, the colleagues will also help respond to some of the questions that will come through. So with that, Chairperson, I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mofe. Can I check if there are any members who have questions, comments, or recommendations? Any hands at this point in time? But I will raise my questions. Firstly, I think it's the concern around investment by business and private sector in research and development in South Africa is not a new concern. It's a concern that the committee
Colleagues, I think the chair is struggling with the network. Mr. Mofe, I hope that you are noting that I have raised my hand. Okay. Chairperson.
Hi, Whip. Was I not audible?
You are not audible. You are even kicked out. So can you start where you have left in terms of the concern noted for business investment? Then we can continue from there. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Whip. So as I was saying, that the concern around the investment of business and private sector and research and development is not a new one to the committee. I think we've been aware of this concern for some time, and it's something we've reiterated, quite a number of our concerns are something we've reiterated quite a number of times. Hence, we're even having this engagement today as part of trying to monitor if there's any progress that we're making in that regard. I know, had also hoped that with the finalization of the decadal plan, we would see progress in relation to investment by private sector or business. And of course, I mean, the decadal plan has just been finalized last year. And so it is a 10-year plan, and hopefully through the various efforts that are articulated within the decadal plan, it will bear some fruit, maybe not in our tenure, but in perhaps the 7th or 8th administration. I know our visit to Switzerland also really put into perspective, in a very literal sense, what business investment in research and development looks like, you know? I mean, there's a slide here where it says that the bulk of BERD comprises applied research and experimental development, which is more than 90%, comprises applied research and experimental development, as opposed to higher education institutions, which spend more on basic research. And like that, for me, it makes sense that business would want to invest more in institutions of applied research and in spaces where there's experimental development, like we've seen in Switzerland. I mean, when we went to the innovation parks that they have, into their many institutions of applied sciences, particularly partnerships they have in the private sector. And so we've seen it, and it's something that it's something that I believe we could achieve. And the slides further articulate what some of the hindrances to achieving greater investment by business in research and development are, right? And those are noted, I think, on slide 19. Those are duly noted. But a question that I have, which speaks to attitude, because I think we've gotten the sense that there's no will. You know, there's an attitude problem. To simply put it, there is no will by business. And I don't know if Dr. Moaffe can speak to that, whether if we had to perhaps fix or work on all these other factors that you've listed on slide 19, that then create greater will, like, will the matter be resolved, or would we still have let me not say it's unwilling, because I mean, that's the question I'm asking. Maybe would we still have the slow pace of investments by business or private sector? I hope that makes sense. But I wanted to just reflect on the fact that we have seen how business is interested in spaces of applied research and experimental development. And I think if we were to find a way to strengthen, and I've been saying this a lot when I speak about the technology stations. What do we call them again? TSPs? Yeah, I think we call them TSPs. But these tech stations where we have the harnessing of technologies, hoping that they will be commercialized. I have been emphasizing the fact that it would be great to see them in TVET colleges. But I also think that in order for us to meet this interest of business in applied research and experimental development, we could perhaps harness and strengthen and create world-class TVET colleges that almost have a very high level of applied research and experimental development, which have a very seamless articulation between a university of technology and, for example, a TVET college, and happened through these tech stations that we have, where we also harness the universities of technology that we have, because we have them. And I think when we went to Durban University of Technology during our oversight about a year ago, we saw some of the great work that's coming from our universities of technology, right? And so we have the capacity to become attractive to business. But then to go to another question that I have, well, those were reflections, and somewhere there they are questions. Dr. Moafe, you will find which ones are reflections and which ones are questions. But yeah, I wanted to say that we welcome the little bit of an uptake on GERD, and I also wanted to ask a question that have we seen a decline in investment by business over the years? Like, so noting from 2003, I think was expressed, or have we just seen greater investment by government, to the extent of which government is out investing business? I think that's the question. So yeah, so is it an issue of decline and like regress, or is it a matter of government investing more, therefore the lower investment by business being very evident? I hope that makes sense. I think those are just the reflections I have for now, and then I'll hand over to Honorable Manani. So,
thank you, Chairperson. And let me start by greeting everyone on the platform. And one would want to welcome the presentation, Chair. Chairperson, let me start by saying that if there's a department that actually makes it easy for us to speak about the developmental state capacity, is DSI. And I want to acknowledge and appreciate the work that they are doing to ensure that we actually stick to our fit for purpose in terms of innovation and research in the country. Chair, I want to indicate as well that you have covered me on the issue of the concern of business and private investment, of which one would want to know, besides what Dr. Moafe has presented here in terms of what they are doing, do they have a plan in place that stipulates a program of action in terms of how are they going to unfold in engaging business sector and private? If they do have, can they submit in writing to us as the PC? And Chairperson, I've noted that on his presentation on issues of SMMEs and new innovators, they have created a digital program of which anyone can check online in terms of their interest of innovation, where can they get assistance. So I want to check, do they have any conducive platform for those who are at the rurals? Because you would know that we still have places that doesn't have connectivity, or where people are far-reached with services. Do they have a plan in terms of ensuring that they include those who are far away from where they can access these services? The other question that one would want to ask a Chairperson is in relation to the Innovation Fund highlights. It is very exciting and very impressive. But I want to check, where is the involvement or part of the district model in terms of other innovations? Because one have noted that, for example, on that one of 2 medical devices prototypes, I think the district, the DDM can play a role in terms of ensuring those services are getting used by those who are vulnerable and marginalized. So I want to check on these Innovation Fund, where do we locate the DDM? The other thing that one would want to check, Chairperson, is with regards to what they have indicated on people who are absorbed in the system, be it those who are done with their research and doctorates. But I want to check, do they have any monitoring system for those that cannot be absorbed by the system in terms of checking where are they on exit opportunities, and what is their role that they are playing in terms of patriotism to ensure that we really spread the message in terms of capabilities of DSI in our country and promotion of the STEM in our country. And Chair, the other one that one would want to ask is with regards to the proposal for innovations. I want to check if they do have dates or periods in terms of this particular call for proposal, or is it throughout the year, or how do they deal about? They have indicated on the tax incentive innovation on other companies not disclosing their size. I want to check, Dr. Mofe, what is the implication of one not disclosing the size, or is it just normal and it can be taken like that as other? And what is the reason that people, they don't actually disclose their sizes of companies? And I think lastly, Chairperson, I want to fully agree with them when they say that R&D incentives needs more of awareness programs, on the basis that we know that most of the people in our townships or in rural areas, they do have innovations. However, they don't know where to get help on such. So there's a need, Dr. Mofe, that you stretch that your awarenesses in terms of ensuring that you touch the length and breadth of South Africa and you don't leave anyone behind in terms of actually benefiting from this particular funding. Because one believes that most of the people, they don't know about such, and the sooner we get to use the public media platforms like your radios, more especially those ones that are indigenous, we can be able to reach out of those that we are leaving behind. And that's it for myself, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mananiso. I'm so glad you raised the one on the intervention on publicity and whatever marketing strategies. And I think I want to take it as far as saying perhaps the presidential plenary and whatever other interventions are articulated within the decadal plan can assist us with having our embassies actually know the work of the research and development work within this country. I wonder whether or not our embassies are in full knowledge, whether our embassies are in full knowledge of some of the potential work that's being done in research and development in the country, so that in their engagements, whatever bilaterals they are having, they are able to express and articulate some of this great work that is being done, so that we can get greater investment by potential partners in the countries where our embassies are. I mean, I think it's something as small as that. So when you have a presidential plenary, what do you invite the Department of International Relations? What kind of engagements do we have with our embassies for them to know of some of the products that we find within the national system of innovation? Yeah, so I think that for me, something I thought about when I saw the suggestion around marketing and publicity and so forth. All right, that's about it, Dr. Mofe, from myself and the whip. Over to you. Dr. Mofe, the sound is not coming through yet.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much. And thanks for the questions. I think just part of my apologies, there's one of the colleagues from the DSI that I didn't introduce. Sunita, you are in, eh? I suppose you're in. Sunita, who's running our program on local innovation systems, and so I omitted to introduce her. And I want to thank you for the questions. Some of the questions the colleagues will help answer. Both Sunita Khomotso and Dr. Koni. The issue of the plan for engaging the business sector. Yes, we have actually, even as we're talking now, we started engaging with Business for South Africa. And this is the engagement that we've started to ensure that when we talk about the implementation of the decadal plan, that we are beginning to deal directly with the issues that are quite pertinent to our country. So far, I have personally led engagements that involved the CSIR and Business for South Africa looking at the aspects of logistics, where the CSIR is working with the business in terms of looking at how can we improve the aspects of logistics in various corridors. They've now already done some good work on the N4 corridor, and now they're looking at the N3 corridor. So we have had quite a lot of positive engagements and the tangible and reportable contributions that Business for South Africa was able to acknowledge coming from the CSIR. And what that does is it also increases the opportunity for businesses to see value in the work that the department and government is doing in science, technology, and innovation. The second area, and our last meeting for that was last week, Wednesday, is in the area of crime prevention and crime and corruption prevention. And again, using various technologies, whether you're talking about dealing with issues of cyber security and various forms of cyber crime, and also the use of technologies in the general combat of crime. So that particular meeting also sat with the relevant committees from the Business for South Africa last week, and a number of projects are being looked at in terms of what needs to be done. So that's really just one of the areas that we're looking at. But the other one, as I've indicated, is the involvement in the Innovation Fund of various fund managers is also assisting us in drawing the private sector. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, when the stats and the impact of the Innovation Fund and some of these initiatives that we've started now with the implementation of the decadal plan start to surface, we might just start to see a positive upturn on these matters of the coming on board of the business investment. The issue of the Innovation Bridge portal and how conducive we want to make it in terms of accessibility or inclusiveness. We've got a program called the Innovation for Inclusive Development, and part of that program, through the initiatives such as the establishment of living labs in rural areas and in townships, we want to use that to create what we call innovative spaces. And these are spaces that will probably be powered in terms of access to internet, in terms of access to various services, and also to the point that the chair mentioned, using this also as an extension of some of the services that currently reside as part of the tech stations in universities of technology. And that's the same point as well. I want to address, Chairperson, that we are finalizing now the strategy for the technology station, and very central in that strategy is the growth of the tech station program beyond where it currently is. And we're looking at various models, one being the use of the technology transfer offices at universities, and the other, again, co-locating these living labs that we are launching at with some of the TechStation capabilities, but looking specifically at the TVET colleges as the anchors of some of this program. I'm going to respond to a point that you made, Chairperson, which I think is very crucial, around whether our embassies know the work of the department. What we are always asked to do before the new ambassadors leave for their various posting is we go and we present various capabilities within government. I think we need to go beyond that, and we really need to, as and when we've got opportunities to go abroad, to have a day dedicated at engaging these embassies in terms of just making them aware of some of the technologies that are coming out of here. I mean, I want to use an example of one embassy where I went, and they were busy talking glowingly about some company that wants to manufacture small satellites for South Africa, and they want to engage. And the issue is, we are actually one amongst the big players in that area. So we basically are servicing other jurisdictions. And I realize if we can really have this initiative of engaging them and raising awareness of what we do, it will really go a long way. So we take that, Chairperson, and it's something that I actually started doing prior to us hosting the Geo-Ministerial Summit last year. So I engaged 2 embassies already, and I'm going to be building on that. Publicity, and I think that's the part that was mentioned by both the Chairperson and Honorable Mananiso, is really a very good, a very big area of our work. Firstly, because if we don't do this, we tend to get detached to some of the communities, but also because we want to use that publicity and engagement also as a way of getting to see what actually is possible where, whether we're talking about the extension of the tech stations or whether we're talking about the growth of our own programs around innovation for inclusive development. The issue of publicity will actually help us quite a lot. The last point, and Khomotso, you're going to be ready to respond to the questions that pertain mostly to surveys, and Sunita on the ones that relate to our Sector Innovation Fund, and then Connie, if you can add on the issue of the Innovation Fund, is the issue of whether we are out investing the businesses or we are investing more as government. The reality is that we are completely out investing them because even in our own sense, the growth hasn't really been phenomenal, but we still are out investing them. So there's therefore a need to continue to engage. Attitude issues, I think there is a mix of things, and that sometimes get to be part of that because we see that sometimes there is a lot of mistrust between government and the business sector, but some of it, and I think that one of the times where we started to build a lot of confidence and even relationship was during COVID, and we want to continue to build on that kind of goodwill that we had then to grow this partnership. And we are finding that there are certain low-hanging fruits that we are starting to get out of it. Khomotso, you want to add on to some of the questions relating to the surveys?
Thank you, DDG. Yes, I would like to add, and thanks, Chair. In terms of the first one, maybe just 4 points from my side. The one on funding, whether we are out, the government is more in terms of funding versus the business sector. The DDG is quite spot on. If you look into slide 9, which actually shows the trends over time, which is more of rent values, you'll see that indeed government is still growing. However, the business sector was growing until a certain point, then it started coming down, and with the latest point, starting to pick up. So the trends over times in terms of rent, actual rent money, we are investing more in terms of government. But then if you look also the chapter, the slide on slide 10, the one on the shifts that shows the proportions. So this shows the proportions in terms of a pie. How much proportion of business, how much proportion of government. And also against that slide, this one was just showing point in time to compare. But if you look over a time series and see this proportions, you see that indeed government is still proportionally growing, and but business has declined in terms of proportions. So that confirms that. So government is still investing more. Now, in terms of my second point in terms of should we be able to deal with hindrances shown in slide 19, whether it's the attitude problem or not. And I can also add to say that in other surveys that we conduct, called the Main Innovation Survey by the DSI, we actually have found that we've asked a question, what is the R&D-led business in terms of strategies for these companies? How do they take up putting R&D highly in terms of their strategies? And we found that 70% of those companies that were asked actually take R&D to heart. But however, for them to be able to be successful, it will depend on the conducive environment that we are put in place, including those kind of instruments that the DDG was presenting, and other factors really helping. So they are willing in terms of R&D-led strategy as well. And also, what we've shown in the slide in terms of hindrances is the issue of public. We also play a role as public sector. And one of the things that we've put in place in the DSI, which is part of the mechanism within the decadal plan, is the issue of efficient budget allocations within us as government, the national departments up through provincial and municipalities and the local system. So we are putting that in place as a mechanism within the budget coordination to say that the budget that is put forward in terms of R&D, can it be used for R&D? Because we tend to see that what has been put for R&D, coming other emerging issues, the money shifted around. So we are trying to put that in place. Actually, we're implementing this work with DPME and our National Treasury playing a key role in that. So we're looking forward to the fruits of implementing this from the public sector side of things. And maybe just another point, what is the other point on the companies not disclosing sizes? There's no implication of not disclosing company sizes in terms of the turnover, and no reason has been actual advance as to why they are not disclosing. However, with the introduction of the online system, as the DDG indicated earlier on, that we are excited about this new work, it has been made mandatory for companies to disclose their annual turnover so that we can be able to draw data in terms of sizes. So going forward, we believe that this won't be a problem, as we'll be able to collect the data from our online system. Another point to measure is that the person completing the application has no knowledge of the company. Sometimes they don't have that knowledge of the company turnover. And again, there's this issue of really treating some data as highly confidential that we need to also deal with. Hence, sometimes you see that they don't disclose. But however, like I indicated, the online system will really drive us to a more nicer picture in terms of that. And maybe the other point on the awareness program, yes, as we've indicated, that one of the things that we think, because at the same time, when we are putting out these hindrances out there, that those that we can have control over as government, and there are those that we can try and influence. In terms of these awareness programs, we think that is where we have really a bigger hand or a weight that we can influence. And we are partnering with, in order to reduce cost, we are partnering with other government departments like the DTIC when they have their other, functions or seminars like export promotion kind of activities. So we partner with them to raise awareness of the R&D tax incentives. We also try to go to provinces and others to really raise awareness of this program. However, I really need to indicate that, again, it's on us as government to say, how do we prioritize? Because when coming to cutting or pruning of budgets, those are the first things that we tend to prune the budget on. You say, no, this awareness activity, let's cut the budget there, take it there. So we need to also be having that balance to say, let's not cut those budgets where we know that they're going to have a big impact. I think that was my last point, DDG, unless I can come back if I forgot anything. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Sunita?
Thanks, DDG. Good morning, honorable members and chairperson. I want to respond on the issue around the monitoring system that we have for the students that are supported in the Sector Innovation Fund. So we are reliant on the industry associations that we support to gather that information from the universities that they partner with to run the R&D programs. It is very difficult. Often the employment happens after the end of the R&D project. And it does become quite difficult to track people after the end of a contract and to ask our implementing entities to report on that information. It is because with the Sector Innovation Fund, the students that are supported for degrees and projects that are addressing industry needs. And therefore, those tend to be somewhat more specialized than or industry relevant specialists than just a broader bursary program. It is a little bit easier in specialized industries. So, for example, the students that are supported in wine tech, because that is such a niche area, it becomes easier to monitor them, whether they do become employed, whether they continue within the academia space. But it is just generally difficult to track people who leave the system. There are also issues that arise as a result of POPI Act. So while we don't have a dedicated system to monitor them, we are with the industry associations that we partner with trying to at least monitor what happens to the students and the interns we are supporting. The question around whether the calls are open-ended or not, for the Sector Innovation Fund, they are not open-ended. We're now in the third phase, and we run the call for proposals process for a particular phase. So they tend to run for 3 to 4 years. And there isn't a current call open for that. And any further calls would be dependent on whether we are able to secure funding to continue with the program beyond this current phase. And then, DDG, I just wanted to address the question around how are we supporting people who are not situated in, close to the tech stations, the universities. It is not that program or the programs we do around that are not part of this presentation, but there are initiatives in place within the department that make a concerted effort to try and reach out to people who are in what we call traditionally underserved areas when it comes to STI support, and to try and increase the spatial footprint of innovation. Those programs include, for example, the Living Labs program, the initiative for developing innovation champions within local municipalities, as well as the Regional Innovation Support Program, which tends to work more with community-based organizations and non-governmental entities to try and build innovation ecosystems in areas that generally tend not to get support. So areas like Siabuswa in Mpumalanga, or even somewhere like Stellenbosch, where you focus on an area like Kayamandi as opposed to Stellenbosch town. So there are a number of programs in the department that are trying to deal with that problem, but they were not part of this presentation. I think, DDG, I have covered all the questions linked to the Sector Innovation Fund, but if I have missed anything, I will come back. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sunita. Connie? Connie, unmute. We still can't hear you, unless it's just me.
Also,
we can't hear you.
can't hear her.
Connie, you are not being heard. Maybe just try and speak without the headphones. Disconnect the headphones. And as he's getting himself ready, perhaps just to maybe come on in some of the questions that have not been answered or probably need to be answered. So I see Connie's audio is coming through, but it's not through yet. It looks like he's connecting. Okay, yeah. So the question of the district development model, I think Sunita probably did go a little bit into that as he highlighted what we were trying to do. Let me see if I can pick Connie on the speaker. He just gave me a call. Connie, you can speak to the speaker.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear him?
So
I'll put him on my phone speaker.
Yes, we can.
Yeah,
We can.
Yeah, you can go ahead, Connie.
Okay. Thank you, DDG. Thank you, Chair and honorable members. I just wanted to add 2 points, and I think the first one, it has to do with the Innovation Bridge portal, how we intend to expand our reach. I think the plan that we have as part of our strategy going forward is that we want to actually make the portal to be zero rated, so that everybody who can have at least access to mobile can access the portal without having to be charged a fee. We think that will go a long way into addressing our reach problem. The second approach that we are proposing is to actually use our higher education institution, the TVETs and the universities in different provinces, to actually have some road shows to promote this portal, because we think it really offers ample opportunity for the areas that are very remote. Then we can therefore use these higher education institutions as hubs to support us in stretching our reach. The last point, I think it has to do with the Innovation Fund, whether it's open-ended or it's closed. I think it's an open-ended wherever the entrepreneur is at the stage where they think they can raise a catalytic capital with this intermediaries. I think they can approach them anytime, then they can go through via due diligence. The other point is on the how do Innovation Fund activities appear as part of the DD model? We think when the DD model team do their mapping, these 2 projects that you have indicated, Honorable Member, there will be some of the program that will feature as part of their our STA intervention per that district. We certainly agree with your assessment that this provides an opportunity actually at least to upscale this intervention, particularly when it has to do with our access to health and medical devices. I'll stop at that, DDG and Chair, and sorry for technical problems. I'm not sure why I'm unable to engage through this platform. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I wanted to just add on the issue of the district development model. All the projects, we're mapping them into the DDM, especially highlighting those that when they are registered, they can actually have a much bigger impact. And it talks to the point that Sunita has mentioned around the establishment of the living labs that are really an extension of the work of the department into some of the most remote places. And we're using them as an anchor for a whole range of other initiatives. So we want to make sure that there's a coverage. That's why we also note and register which provinces and which areas are this happening, because one of the things we also want to do is to deliberately also make sure that those areas that are marginalized are included. So the question that Honorable Maniso asked as well, which I want to add on to, which is very crucial, is this whole issue of tracking the beneficiaries. We are developing a system now, which we are piloting, to actually start to monitor the progression of young people that come through our system. And the idea is that this will help us look at the impact of the program. So in a space of 5 years, you are able to say, in year 1, we were supporting with various programs in the department so many young people. Where are they? How many of those have been employed? How many of those have actually started their own companies? How many of those have fallen through the cracks? And this is really just at the beginning. We're just piloting it with the idea that when we get the systems to really have a sense of what exactly we are dealing with and how we can manage it, we are actually going to expand it, because there's no point in us just reporting the numbers for 1 year. We want to really look at a much bigger impact. So we hope that we will be able to, with time, provide some of the tracking outcomes as we go forward. Then in terms of the due dates for proposal, I think that has been responded to. So we got a hybrid system. There are some programs where calls are made. Like now, we've just made a call through Technology Innovation Agency for anybody who wants support in the area of grassroots innovation to apply. So that is going to happen, and it closes. But the thing is, it's not once a year. So when it closes, applications are considered, and then when they've been processed, then another call comes. So there are those kind of initiatives where the calls are made, and there are others that are open-ended, like the Innovation Fund, where as long as we have disbursed funding to the fund managers, those can be contacted anytime as and when the innovator has got an idea that they want funded. So I think we have dealt with the issue of the engagement with the business sector, some of the initiatives already on the go, and some that have been planned, and some that have been ongoing even prior to us starting to engage with Business for South Africa since COVID up until now. So I think that unless we've missed something, Chairperson and honorable members, I will hand over back to you, and you can alert us if there's anything that we have left out so we can make sure that it's addressed. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mofe, and to the colleagues. I don't think there's anything that has been left out. If there's any additional information that members would like, they can and you can respond accordingly. appreciate the work that you're doing, and we really hope. I mean, we're soon going to be dealing with the legacy report of the team, and there are going to be. It says my network is unstable. I hope colleagues can still hear me, and so some of the concerns that are coming out of today's conversation are going to be items that we lift as concerns with recommendations on how they can possibly be how the department can be supported to overcome some of these particular challenges. But with that being said, we acknowledge the work that is being done by the department. This meeting has come to an end. I know we're supposed to be adopting minutes and a report, but I'd like to kindly appeal to members that we do so in next week's sitting, or rather meeting. So having said that, if we're all in agreement with that proposal, this meeting has come to an end. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I think there's hard work to do.
What say, Honorable Bosho?
No, I think you have a lot of work to do before the weekend may commence.
Have a lovely weekend, Honorable Bosho.
Thank you. Same to you.